Hi guys, good evening and then welcome back for Ask the Speakers session, right? We have collected questions that has been posted in the Q&A from morning for each of those sessions, and we have collated together, and I'm going to be the moderator, and wherever my friends need a little bit of assistance or anything that from my side, I will actually put in. Otherwise, they are the gurus in their respective field, and then I think they should be able to answer things out for you, right? If you have any new questions that's coming in, please do dump it back to in the question and panel, and Lai will pass it to me across, and then we will quickly answer them too, right? So it's around 4:40 now, 4:38. So this session will be for another 30 minutes until 5:05, and then you will have a common track at 5:10 p.m. which is a closing track where all tracks merge together. You don't have to leave anywhere, just be in the cybersecurity track itself, and you'll be able to see what's happening in all the tracks. So it'll be a standard same content that will play across all the track, guys. So that with that the thing's cleared, let's go ahead. Hey guys, Amitabh and Pat. Look great, cool, good, all with a white background. Pat, do you know, guys, Pat in his last session somehow said I'm a bad guy.
Yeah.
Bad guys like Clement. I was like, Pat, how did you do that?
I was trying to see if you're listening, Clement.
Oh yeah. Okay, guys. So let's get started with the questions, right? And let's feel free to post some more questions. Pat, a question to you that has been posted. A pretty sticky one. I thought of retaining it so that you can actually give a clarification to our audience. Okay. OS risk trend over time.
Yeah.
Operating system risk trend over time that you showed.
Yeah.
The iOS had a lot of medium severities. Yes, they had a lot of vulnerabilities, but most of them were medium severities. But Android had less vulnerabilities, but had high severity. Doesn't it seem like not a fair comparison?
Right. So I think, yeah, it is a sticky one, Clement. Thanks for that. So the data actually came from our research team, right? So I think the way it's ranked in terms of severity are actually a common. It's a CVE standard, right? And that's why we're using the number of median and high together to basically put together the data lines and the trend lines, right? So I think it's just how you look at the data in a different perspective, right? So I don't think that there's any absolute. I think the point of showing that slide is to just give you a trend that there's actually more and more things being found, right, in certain platform, and I think the numbers are relative. Is really I'm trying to draw out the trend, right? So I think ultimately the audience you make a right judgment about it. And I truly believe, I think the point I was trying to get across is that no operating system platform is secure, right? And ultimately knowing that as a foundation of a security platform and layer defense is really what we're trying to promote, so that you're aware of what the things can get to you and then how to protect yourself.
Great, thanks, Pat. Okay, guys, I can add something to it. See, a security of a software. Any software for that matter, right? A security of a software can be measured with two things. One is, as what Pat said, the number of vulnerabilities that has been actually declared and has been actually patched. So you can find that from the CVE database. So you go to CVE database on the internet, you'll be able to find all those vulnerabilities that each of the software has patched, right? Because a lot of patches do refer back to CVE numbers. So if you take the CVE database as a base, then you will be able to find that there's a whole lot of vulnerabilities in a whole lot of softwares, including our antiviruses. Antivirus do have a lot of vulnerabilities. Our firewalls do have a lot of vulnerabilities. If you're thinking that the firewall is your savior or the antivirus is your savior of all the vulnerable applications, please be reminded the firewalls and antiviruses and your routers and your switches and all your defense devices do have their own set of vulnerabilities. So hardwares and softwares do end up in having vulnerabilities. So CVE database is a good place. Just Google it out for CVE database. You will have a search feature down there. Just type in whatever software you're looking for, whether it's Apple iOS or Android, or for that matter, like Trend Micro, or Kaspersky, or Palo Alto. You will find a whole lot of vulnerabilities that has been patched. So that's one way of actually measuring. The other way of measurement is the number of 0 days out there and how much someone is paying for those 0 days, right? Because 0 days are those that has not been informed to the vendor, or the vendor is not working on a patch, right? So those kind of scenarios, where do we get those numbers from? And that's a site which Pat showed you, which is ZeroDM. You looked at ZeroDM. They pay more for Android than iPhone, and they gave on 13th of May, ZeroDM actually released a Twitter feed, and that's publicly available. Go to Google and type ZeroDM Twitter on iOS. You will find on 13th May, they said that they have too much of 0 days on iPhone, and they are actually holding the new purchases of 0 days or vulnerabilities on iPhone for next 2-3 months. And they've also said the price is going to go down. That actually shows that there are too many vulnerabilities that are not reported to the software vendor. So if you actually put all this one on one together, you will know where those problems are. So you can take these two different factors as a measurement, not only the CVE, because that's only the known, where unknown is still a factor to be considered. Pat?
Great way to put it. Yeah, spot on.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that would have explained. If anyone still have questions, do drop by in the question live. Please pick it up if there's anything, and then bump it to us. Right. So now to Amitabh, the man with the grandmother story. I didn't know Amitabh is a good storyteller, right? Right. And thereafter, everyone started referring the story of Amitabh. Okay, Pat said, "Oh well, I got mesmerized with the grandmother, and the gold box." Okay, now Amitabh, your question, or Mr. Vijay from India has asked this question. Yeah? As long as we get into internet or IT or mobile, we end up in having a lot of insecurity and risk of being hacked. Okay? And we install antivirus, firewall, and other softwares who also introduce more vulnerability into our ecosystem. So if everything is like vulnerability, 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 are we always being compromised? And is there any way for me to check on my computer, on my devices, that whether am I being already hacked?
Well, I think to Vijay, my response will be slightly long, if you can bear with me for a moment. I need to take you back into history, Vijay, when we actually created internet. When ARPANET, which is the godfather of internet, became a reality, the basic context of the technology creation was to share information. So I had some research as a university, and I wanted to share it with Clement's University, and that's how the internet foundation was laid out. When the first 100 networked computers became a reality, and ARPANET was still called as ARPANET, and it started expanding beyond the US into other continents. Another reality which came in front of us as IT professionals, there was no word as cyber at that time. The data word and data security word was not even invented. So history is very crucial for you to understand the current context. The first 100 computers came in, and we suddenly realized that there's a lot of other related information which is flowing. Now it was not just research papers. These research papers were being sold to organizations to build confidential intellectual properties. And by the time this realization actually came in, internet was becoming a reality. It was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and we had servers and new technologies being introduced over a spate of time, over a time frame. So from that period to now, let me give you a very straight line answer. Internet by design is insecure. We have tried our best as technology experts, as professionals, to do multiple things around the internet. So we said, okay, so it's like a complete chaos in which we are trying to put a lot of band-aids. So the first thing that as a IT infrastructure holder of internet worldwide, and each one of us are a member of it in whichever field you are, we said we need to have a secure layer on internet. And anybody will tell you, and Clement will prove it to you by hacking it, that even SSL2 is so inherently insecure that the word security actually vanishes from that definition. So yes, to that extent, internet is by design insecure. Then came the period of Blackberries and Nokia, and mobile technology became a reality. And the first great mobile technology which was invented was called as Symbian. And Symbian is basically the great grandfather of Android. And Symbian was the foundation of Nokia's N series of phones. Now Nokia is long gone, those phones are all gone. But what happened with Symbian is that Nokia enclosed the whole development scenario and made it closed-ended. The vulnerabilities inside Symbian remained as it is. And then later on, Symbian modified and morphed itself into a technology base which we call today as Android. In fact, Android, I will not qualify as saying it was originated from Symbian, but it took the same architecture and actually became the reality. So that's the reason when Pat is actually presenting you these problems, some of them are inherently there in the technology that we created. And any software developer will tell you that every 25,000 lines of code has minimum of 5 vulnerabilities, minimum. So if you take 37 million lines of code of Windows, Microsoft Windows, approximately, take a few million, you are talking about thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities which are inherently built into the system. So whichever platform you are, it is by design, human design vulnerable. Now, what is the reality of patching it? How do we actually move forward? So there are various other methodologies invented. So we said, all the operational development or software development or SDLCs needs to have a security parameter. So we started what is called as development-related security. There are a lot of short terms for it. I will not confuse the non-text here. But we said security needs to become a core parameter in development. With Agile and Scrum methodologies being mounted on top of it, it was taken as a core feature to be integrated in every core development. But even after that, the development scenarios did not change. We actually ended up with more insecure systems. Again, to blame it is possibly on the godfathers and the grandfathers of technology bases on which the internet runs by design. And because of that, the whole environment in which we are operating, even the call and the web technologies that you're seeing on which you're currently visible, we are all visible, it is extremely difficult for anybody to really articulate and say that, oh, if we do these 5 things, we will be completely secure. And that's the reason in the security business, we say there is no concept of zero security. But there exists a concept which is called as zero trust. So when you are actually integrating any kind of technology base in your organization, you move from one device talking to the other device, you basically say, I don't trust that device. And because you don't trust that device, you create parameters of trying to evaluate. So all the AAAs or the process of authentication, authorization, they came in as a methodology to ensure that we actually create authentication on both. But even after doing all of it, 2-factor, multi-factor authentications, we still see that just because of lack of education, lack of understanding of cyber, cyber is still a very technical domain. It's almost how legal and law is to a commoner. Cybersecurity, oh my God, technology, it's too complex, jargons. A lot of people take a lot of complication around. It's actually as simple as maintaining cyber hygiene on a daily basis. How do you access your bank? Do you freshen your cash on a regular basis? Are you aware of technologies which are available on device in the market to protect yourself? Are you using the same ID from the bank which you actually use on your social media? Some hygiene aspects, if you take care of it, you will be relatively not at risk. However, as I say that, there is no zero risk scenario. Clement.
Okay, thanks, Amitabh. Thanks, guys. As Amitabh said, to sum it, there's nothing called as 100% security, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't put your defenses. See, if we take a very simple analogy, we all are living in our house. Whichever part of the world we are living, in our house, we always have a wooden door in the front, right? And we will not believe in that wooden door. We'll put a grill gate in front of the wooden door. We again will not feel actually comfortable with the grill gate. We'll start putting padlocks. You put one padlock, then you end up in putting two padlocks. If you have more than two padlocks, you're not living in a house, you're living in a jail, right? But you end up in actually having those padlocks. And then you have something as CCTV, alarm systems. Then you have your cats, your dogs, your anacondas or your dragons, at least in stickers, right? But again, after having all of that, ask yourself, do you really think a robber can't get into your house? He can still, right? Then why did you put all of that defenses in place? In a very simple way, you're making life difficult so that he has to break in rather than walking in into your defenses. So you need to put in your defenses in all the three layers of people, your process, and technology. Do not believe only on technology. As Amitabh rightly pointed out, our technologies is at faulty by design, right? For all the IT people in this conference who are listening to us, right? If I ask you to list down all the protocols that we use day in and day out that are a security by design, you will end up in having one or two, while we have a long list of protocols. That's the problem. Okay, guys, so let's move on to the next question.
Clement, can I give one more example to our Indian friends here who are there on the call? I think they.
Okay, yes, buddy. If you move towards your left too much, we can't hear you. So the mic is having a little bit, so you have to be static.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So a lot of people actually joined us from India, and because I basically come from India, I've spent my early days in India. In India, in villages, if you go to villages in India, they actually used to construct the walls of the houses, and people may not know, Pat, you may not know, to be really, really thick, and really thick walls. And then they will call this guy to come with an iron rod and try and break it. And they will time it. How much time does it take for it to get broken down? That's the basic foundation of perimeter defense. If whatever Clement said, if you understand, you cannot actually live without it. You need to have that wall to be thickened so that it takes more and more time for somebody to come in and makes it difficult for people to actually come into your asset area or to your core asset. So just to, sorry, I missed the second part of the question, but that's what it's all about. Try and create an environment with multiple concentric circles of security, which we technically call as defense depth. But just try and do that, and you will be able to secure your assets much better.
Okay, thanks, Amitabh. Pat, to you.
Sure.
It's not a sticky question, okay? I've already asked you a sticky question, so I'm going to ask you a very simple question now. Okay. Okay.
No
Okay. This is exactly how the question is. Okay. I'm actually clearing it a little bit of a grammar here and there, but exactly this is. I need Pat to reply for this later. How can we check whether our mobile is safe? Okay, this is the first question. The second question is, the phones like Oppo phone or Vivo phone comes with its own antivirus, like what Samsung Knox is. And we use WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook messengers, and it has a lot of personal information. And the phone also has a whole lot of pictures. How do we make our phone safe? And another question I would want to add on, there's another person has asked this same similar question. How do we set up security in our phone by ourselves to make it safe? So everyone is now inching around how to make my phone safe. And And Pat, you have told that even iPhone is not secure because iPhone and Apple IT guys and the marketing guys have been telling to the whole world that iPhone is the most secure phone in the world. Yeah. And we have been telling not necessarily guys. So now all those people are turning back and asking Pat, how am I supposed to be safe now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for pulling all the questions together, Clement. And I think that makes me create a sort of summary. So I think I'll come back to how do we know and how to protect, right, later. I think I'll tackle the second question around, some of the phone comes with native antivirus security features, right? And actually predominantly there's more on the Android side, right? So I think one very important concept I think we talked about today is that, and I think Clement, you mentioned in your Cybersecurity chain as well, right? Antivirus, the way the antivirus solution work is based on looking at non-signatures and patterns, right? So a lot of the time, it's been the approach that people have done for a long time. It doesn't really work on the laptop today, and it doesn't actually work on mobile, right? Take for instance the example where Clement, you downloaded an application, you inject the malware in there, and guess what? That file is new. It's actually brand new signature that's not in any of the databases. Then antivirus solution will have the difficult time to keeping up, right? So I think the important thing is antivirus is one of the control that you apply, and a lot of the attack we talked about, for example, phishing, some of the more advanced network type of attack, and the operating system level control. These are things that doesn't necessarily have a signature that goes into the memory while you're browsing, while you're using WhatsApp, and those are the kind of thing that I think it's the new generation of the attack entry point, right? So they are good. I think I would say first level. In fact, I've got a few of the Oppo and Xiaomi phones. They actually do a good job protecting the user's privacy, right? Because sometimes if you say allow to certain application, they will actually override it and make sure you don't necessarily giving away too much permission, right? So they do actually provide good protection for the consumer, but ultimately you want to be able to protect. And going back to your earlier comment, right, Clement, is about be more holistic, looking at all the different things that could happen, rather than just looking at one way. As we know, right, the 7 monsters, are you covering all of them or you're covering one or two, right? So that would be the one. And then I think in terms of how do we protect, so I still truly believe, right, a lot of us wear a smartwatch today, right? iWatch, fitness tracker, Fitbit. Did you guys ask yourself why you actually do that, right? Of course, the people will say it's cool, right? I get all these information, telemetry, feedback, and temperature, my body weight, etc. But actually, if you look at what the body tracker or health tracker is doing, it's actually giving you real-time feedback, right? Around your information about your body, tells you something is about to go wrong. Maybe you didn't sleep well, right? Or the quality of sleep is not good. Or your blood pressure is increasing, etc. So really, if you think about what we do with our body, you really need to provide active monitoring, the same technique to apply to your mobile phone, right? And this is really just using an active security solution, something that's not so much signature and antivirus based, more around behavior based, right? So something that we can definitely help you. And if you reach out to the organizer, to Clement, we can help you get access to that and test out those solutions, right? So I think the last thing I will just quickly cover is coming back to the summary, nothing is secure, right? If you think you'll never get sick by wearing one layer jacket, that would probably be something that you would not even do, right? In the winter time, you put scarves and mufflers and maybe jumper inside, multi layers. So it's the same thing as you treat the mobile devices as well. Doesn't matter what marketing and people say. I think if you just wear one jacket and expect everything's going to be okay, I think that is a bit foolish as well, right? So I think that's how I would address those questions. Clement, do you have anything to add, or Amitabh?
Okay, I'm all right with that answer, buddy. It's perfectly dot on. I'm actually getting in more questions from our users, and I'm going to actually take one or two for you, buddy, straight away.
Sure.
And then I'll go to Amitabh, and then I'll actually club a few questions to Amitabh so he can answer that. Okay. Okay, this is to Pat. Does reformatting my phone to factory settings allow all previous compromised or jailbroken applications to be removed, or can they compromise the runtime environment or the kernel of the phone and re-inject malicious code while the phone is going reformatting through factory settings?
Right. So that's a great question, Clement. So I think to answer this question, it really depends on the bug or the technique the attacker is using to get into the device, right? Generally, if you have a device is compromised, we found that it's compromised, the recommendation is to reformat the device to the factory reset, right? So initial state. And if there's a newer version of the operating system, we strongly recommend you update that, right? Because that removes, hopefully, the bug that the attacker used to get into your device, right? However, if you're running a version that's already the latest, right? And this could be, the example that Clement gave, if it's a 0-day bug that has not been discovered, but it's out there. So if the attacker was able to get in, even after you format or rebuild, the same bug still exists, right? So the attacker can still use the same way, the same backdoor that they came in, come back in again, right? So I think ultimately doing the reset is a good first step, but I think don't forget, once you clean out the house, you still have to put your monitoring and sensor back just to make sure that everything's still in a good condition, is not being compromised again, right? So.
Okay, Pat, one more question for you before I go to Amitabh. Yes. This is from Jim Perry. Most of the typical obfuscation solution, they do the security in offline, inside the code logic.
Yep.
And need to actually warp binary to deploy again when changed something. Do you have any recommendation that can help us to make a smarter approach against these kind of attacks?
Right. So Clement, I think this is probably a fairly technical question. I can see this guy, the person asked the question is probably a developer and have experience.
Developer by nature, correct? Yeah.
So I think for the technical audience out there, right? So I think the traditional approach of code obfuscation or protection is really using so you give this solution the application. They will generate they'll inject and wrap the application. They create a new version, right? And then they'll let you go and publish the application. But sometimes if there is a problem with this behavior, you then have to do the process again, right? So I think the real challenge of this approach is that it's not very scalable and it doesn't work very well in response to the changes, right? Because think about how long does it take you to update your application and get approval from Google and Apple and then apply the protection, right? So really, I think the notion of our solution is really give you the ability to have SDK embedded in your application where you have total control, right? And you can then design the actions and the responses that you want to take as part of the workflow, and then allow you to automatically decide during the runtime, okay, so if the device is, say, for example, jailbroken, has a Trojan on it, it's also running on a compromised device. When those things are true, go and execute this action, right? And you can actually do that dynamically, right? So I think it's a great question and definitely something that for more advanced enterprises that actually are the big focus of an attack. These are some of the ways you want to be able to respond to these protections. Yeah?
Thanks, Pat. Okay, Amitabh, how could we retest or reassess our IT security or BCP or DRP, business continuity, as well as disaster recovery, for ensuring it actually copes up with the current trend or the changing dynamic trend? Let's put it that way.
Okay, I think the question itself has an answer. Is that if you're looking at assessment, you need to start from your reassessment, you need to start from the earlier assessment. What is the structure of your current IT infrastructure? Based on that, what is the guidelines which have been laid down on your business continuity plan? Start from there. The classic problem in revisiting a continuity plan is because if you are a small organization, it's easier to control the variables, and so that you're looking at smaller departments, smaller engagement of individuals, and a smaller resource base to actually have a remote working environment. As you become larger and you have larger and larger teams, you may have to actually now in the COVID world look at multiple sites. I think gone are the days that you're looking at a single resource pool site as a disaster recovery situation, in a disaster recovery situation for business continuity plan, I think given how COVID and what the lessons COVID is teaching us, I think we need to very sincerely look at multiple locations to try and look at how the BCP modulation will happen. The second aspect of it is when you are actually reassessing the risk, rather than doing it in a process where you're actually moving it from top down, start ground up now. I think you need to start from the endpoint and move into the organization and not start the other way around. One of the classic mistakes that we have done in the past is, and I can tell you, and I've been guilty of it, that we have audited organizations and then moved to the endpoints and started talking to actually end users. If COVID has taught us anything, it has taught us forget the core first. Go to the user level. Start from there and then move into the core. And that brings us to what, see, in a development environment, when we build something, we build use cases. How do we build use cases? We say, okay, this is my persona, and this persona will interact with the system like this. So if I have to now audit that process, where will I start? Not from the system. We have to start from the persona. So if your user is actually sitting at home, I think the audit methodology of reassessment needs to start from the endpoint and move back into the core. The third part, when you now come to the core module, or in terms of looking at auditing your current system and current infrastructure, what you need to reassess is the treatment that you're now giving to it. The grandma story that I told you is a very classic example of how we treat data. Because till that, see, if you're mixing, it's called as in management we call it the theory of incompetence. So it's not, don't get misconstrued the word incompetence. Incompetence basically means if you take a glass of water and keep putting sugar in it and keep rotating it, there will come a point that sugar will stop dissolving. Because the concentration level of the sugar in the water is so high that it doesn't allow fresh sugar to dissolve. Why I'm taking this example is that when you're doing risk assessment or looking at reassessing your IT infrastructure, look at the current way of business model operations. So start from business objectives again, because one of the things that organizations need to revisit is how are they going to do the new kind of business in a new world, where customers will not normally engage one-on-one. And the part of the world which we are all part of, Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, the concentration has been in one-on-one engagement with customers. If people don't talk to each other, there is a deficit of trust. So sitting across the table in engagement is essential. And I think what it will do is this pandemic will do is has to really change the behavior. To our Indian audience, I will give you a classic example, which they have, if they have lived in India for a very long time, they will remember, is the migration from Murugan Idli to Kellogg's Cafe, or Kellogg's daily breakfast, or aloo paratha to Kellogg's breakfast. So as the lifestyle will change, so will change the treatment of your risk assessment. And that's what COVID has done to the IT world. Now the IT infrastructure needs to be reassessed from the end user. And when you're coming to the core, you have to revisit the business model to really look at what the equations will be in the coming times. The fourth and the last part of it is when you are looking at now tweaking the system to actually suit the disaster recovery. Now, disaster recovery mechanisms were primarily put under BCP guidelines when there is flood, earthquake, building collapse, terrorist attacks. A lot of things were put into place. What I have been recommending my customers is to now have multi-site interfaces. Now, just imagine Pat's company. It's a very large company. Now, it gets compromised on multiple locations at the same time, which COVID did. And all the infrastructure is actually accessing only one disaster recovery place, then you will have an overload on that disaster recovery setup. So you need to have multi-site recovery mechanism now. where you can actually have multiple data servers which are actually backing up at multiple locations. Why am I saying that? Is because if the next pandemic comes, and Google is a classic example. If the next pandemic comes, thousands and thousands of Google workers were working from home. And their main servers were actually under a lot of pressure, and especially the communication server. So they had to actually have, they built multiple other sites to actually compensate. So my last recommendation on that is basically as you do the reassessment, on the DR front, look at multi-locations and multi-spreading out of your risks so that you can, if something like this happens in the future, you are more preserved and secure. Right.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thanks. Guys, we're going to round up this as we're running late, but I'm going to actually touch on a few questions that has come in. There is a consistent question, is Telegram a safe application? Is WhatsApp a safe application? Is WeChat a safe application? All the applications provide end-to-end encryption. Your data is end-to-end encrypted, but if your phone is compromised, as what Pat showed you, everything is compromised, including your Telegram, WhatsApp, or anything on the phone. Correct? So that's one thing. The second thing is also another common question. How about Mac? Does Mac have the same kind of vulnerabilities like Windows? Can it defend against attacks? Guys, again, this is from a very long time. Okay, Linux and Mac are very secure, and Windows is the only vulnerable operating system in the world. That is something been actually told from a grandmother's story long time back. Today, as long as you have software, you have vulnerability. Linux and Mac has been equally hit all over the place, right? And then Pushpalata Ravi has asked, can you share the checklist of tests or activities that needs to be done before allowing personal devices or the devices when they come back after work from home? Pushpalata, we will work out or rather we will send everyone that checklist. We are going to send a few handouts and we will make sure that this checklist is in that handout. Thank you for bringing this up. Okay, so that's for Pushpalata. Now let me quickly wrap up one or two questions in the other side that has just come. How big is the risk if my company had done the pen test in November and we are actually allowing to add online document submission in the company website? If you are actually doing company, if your company website is allowing people to upload documents and data, the common problem that a lot of the websites have, from my experience, guys, is because when you're uploading, you might upload only PDF documents or you might upload only JPEG documents. Generally, the programmer will check only from the extension .jpeg. If someone goes and actually uploads a file, which is an exe file, .exe.jpeg, then the exe will run, not the JPEG. So when you're uploading documents, please make sure that your developers are checking not the extension, but the file headers. That way you can be actually safe from there. Yes, you need to do pen tests again. Okay, and Aslam says, I feel like lost in forest. I'm a botanist interested in cybersecurity. How to begin learning to reach a level of actually geek, right? It's not very difficult, guys. If you're Aslam, if you're from India, you can reach out to QDrift, who have actually assigned you up. So they will be able to help you. And if you are in this part of the world, reach out to me in LinkedIn. I will map you a path, and within 3 to 6 months, you should be safe traveling, and another few years, you should be in a very comfortable situation, buddy. Okay, guys. Okay, thanks, Amitabh. Thanks, Pat. Okay, thank you guys for all your questions. If you have not picked up your question, don't worry, we will answer it via email. All right, since we know who asked what, as long as you put anonymous, then I don't know who to reply to, right? Okay, guys, hope it was actually useful. Stay online. Within the next 5 minutes, I think the other track has already started. There's a closing that is going to happen, another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and we are done for the day. Again, from our side, thank you. Thanks a lot for joining us throughout the day. Have a great evening.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So guys, please stay on at the track. We are having the main stage setting up right now to prepare for signing off, and there'll be a closing ceremony for all of our audiences and speakers. So thank you, Clement. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Amitabh, for such an informative and engaging sessions.